When researching broad history or the current state of the world, I often prefer to read mainstream academics who just follow the evidence and state facts plainly. At the moment, I'm reading Barry Eichengreen's book, The Populist Temptation: Economic Grievance and Political Reaction in the Modern Era. The book, which is written by a former senior policy advisor to the IMF, is full of class analysis that wouldn't be out of place in a Marxist polemic. He repeatedly points out that the welfare state was deliberately constructed by rulers in order to integrate workers into the existing system, prevent revolts, and thereby ensure social stability. How much state welfare was adopted, at a specific moment, was determined by the balance of class forces between capital and labour and the perceived threat levels to the status quo. For example, he notes that in Britain during the early 1900s, the immediate response in the form of publicly administered social benefits was limited because the threat to the political establishment was limited. The British parliamentary system was firmly established, there was no equivalent of the 1871 Paris Commune, and no need, unlike in Bismarck's Germany, to bind the working class to a newly established state. Modest social protections sufficed to address the insecurity of workers confronted by technical change and foreign competition. He later connects the post-World War II rise in living standards with not just increased economic productivity, but also a social peace that was agreed between capital and labour, whereby capital wasn't disrupted by strikes, and labour received better wages and benefits in return. In the next chapter, he discusses the massive rise in inequality that occurred from the 1970s onwards. He claims that declining unionization has been a factor in rising inequality. The share of American workers covered by unions fell from 27% in 1973 to barely 17% in 1993 and 11% in 2016. Some authors ascribe as much as a third of rising inequality over the period to this decline in union coverage. Since unions also helped to restrain CEO pay, their decline may have also facilitated the explosion of compensation at the top. It is revealing that the rise in inequality was greatest in the United States and United Kingdom, where the fall in union coverage was most pronounced. In other words, as the power of labour declined, the power of capital rose. Eichengreen's analysis of why unions declined focuses on material factors. He writes, "One factor was the falling share of the workforce in manufacturing, where unions traditionally organise. That fall resulted from automation, globalisation, and simple economic maturation. But it had negative implications for the union movement, given the greater difficulty of organising workers in the service sector. Another factor was the same skill-biased technical change described above. Changes in technology and organisation, favouring skilled workers by creating new high-paying opportunities, weakened their support for union policies of wage compression, from which those skilled workers stood to lose. Those changes thereby undermined the coalition of skilled and unskilled workers traditionally supporting unions." During my research, I'm always struck by the extent to which reality has a Marxist or anarchist bias. I find it both amusing and fascinating how often I read mainstream academics who sound like communists, even though they're not, and actually are supporters of the status quo. As always, the source is in the description.